So it looks like we're live. Looks like our runners are readying up. We'll probably be starting pretty shortly. Welcome everyone to another Zelda 2 Randomizer tournament restream. We have JLo providing the restream services, and I'm Amazing Ampharos here on commentary. And we should have an interesting one for you tonight, as we have the number 16 seed neerrm versus the number 26 seed RaikouRider. Both of these players have put in some impressive performances so far to stay alive, and I expect this to be a very evenly matched race here in the bonus bracket. I know both of them have a little bit of nerves. Both of them are specialists in other games, but have picked up Zelda 2 pretty well. So we'll have to see how things go. Speaking of going, we're off. Both players correctly choosing to go left and north palace to discover a beautiful overworld with swamps, graveyards, and nothing useful. It looks like going left is nearly a pure bust. There could be something handy in that grave spot, but it's pretty unlikely. Truly, Ganon has won in this world. It's nothing but a huge graveyard. Looks like once you emerge from it, though, you're pretty close to a palace, so that could be good news. Though you have this encounter with the birds between you and the palace. And just going past the bridge doesn't lead to anything either. One of the hardest things in Randomizer can be getting a seed that's just a very difficult start where you have to do tricky things every time you game over or up A. These players will be really hungry for the boots. Until then, there's going to be a huge premium on not taking early game overs. So it looks like this palace on Raikou's side is palace 3. Definitely the least useful of the 3 palaces to find. You're pretty unlikely to be able to do anything in it without the gloves or downstab. See one into jump cave up here. Raikou's going in a bit. He might not realize this is the jump cave, or maybe he's just farming experience. Either way, this won't be very productive. While neerrm was more drawn to this town, which is of course the wrong end of Saria, no help to anyone. neerrm gains a bit of time by correctly recognizing jump cave and noping right on out, and then finding the Parappa cave. Now, some people like to immediately run from connectors, but given what the starting overworld area is, I totally support the decision to take a connector and end up somewhere else. Looks like the cave doesn't really take you that far, and it looks like there's just not a whole lot of good stuff around here in general. I'm beginning to wonder if to make real progress in the seed, the correct move was to cross the bridge instead of go through the pass. Oh, looks like we have some interesting stuff up here. The medicine cave on neerrm's side. Sometimes a scary cave to find early has more dangerous enemies than the other item caves, but at this point, they're both going to be happy to find anything they can to start making progress. And it looks like our first item is just a heart container. Not going to change much. But it does help neerrm out, just in the sense that he now has a little bit of an exploration advantage. As when he finds this northeast area that seems to have a whole lot of nope in it, he'll be able to just up A out of it. We see both players ducking into a lot of forest tiles. In this situation, that's an especially good move, because the forest tiles not only can give you that 200 P bag like RaikouRider found, but they can also have Bagu. And these players have seen the back end of Saria, so if they find Bagu's note, they can both get a spell out of Saria and cross to a presumably more helpful region of the map than this. Frankly, it'd be hard for there to be a less helpful region of the map than this. neerrm goes the wrong way and leaves behind the 200 P bag. While Raikou is electing to go back south, having missed the medicine cave, we know it has nothing of particular importance. A heart container will not make or break the run. But he might spend some time hunting that cave later, not knowing that it's not containing a useful item. The good thing about both runners here, though, is they're both doing a good job of avoiding deaths. In these kind of seeds, where you just don't have a good starting situation, staying alive is the main predictor of how long it's going to take you to start making progress. So the fact that both runners are avoiding death is really helping them out a lot. As we find the town of Mido on Raikou's side, Mido doesn't help him at all right now. You need the medicine to get the spell and the jumper fairy spell to get downstab. But knowing where it is and knowing that it's in such a centralized, accessible location is very important, since she'll definitely be coming back for downstab and possibly be coming back for the spell. As we see a bit of route divergence, neerrm is heading to the eastern part of this area, discovering a couple caves over here, whereas Raikou's western route has led him to discover the back end of Fairy Cave. Certainly not the most useful cave you could find. Oh, bouncy cats are pretty generous this seed. But the west does contain Palace 1. While the east has a hammer. And like I was talking about earlier, Bagoo for Raikou. But the hammer's a real interesting item. Because we haven't seen any hammer blocks yet. But it definitely increases the value of Death Mountain greatly. And could lead to an extra item. If there's a hammer block cave and neerrm runs across it, he won't have to backtrack for it. He'll be able to just go in and find out. And yeah, it's looking like pretty much all the useful caves and towns are clustered here in the south. It makes sense given how totally barren the north was, but we're going to be finding important goals at a very rapid pace now. As our first spell of the match is coming on Raikou's side, and another item is coming for neerrm. The spell in Saria is the life spell, whereas the item in whatever you call that cave, Fake Parapa Cave in my book, is the child. Life is nice for staying alive. It'll help them if they run into difficult scenarios in the early palaces. Honestly, not a premium spell to get early. But a lot of runners will really enjoy having it. Well, it looks like Raikou has quickly found both ends of Death Mountain, and seems to be taking a minute to contemplate what he wants to do with it. And his decision is absolutely nothing, which is a perfectly good decision to make. I don't think anyone has ever said, you know, I think my run would have been better if I had a little more Death Mountain in it. Oh, there's a tough game over for Raikou. He didn't up A in Palace 1 earlier. He was trying to hold his experience and try to get a little more level out of it. But that red Daira in that room is a very difficult avoid, and it ended up costing him everything. And that's an interesting question, the great Sir Nico. I've often wondered what Link does with this lost child, when he can often hold him for over an hour of gameplay, sometimes never returning the lost child and just going through the Great Palace with this poor kid still in tow. We can only presume that Link crams his child into the very depths of his bag. Probably gags the kid, because we never hear him cry or make a noise. Truly, we have to wonder who is the hero of Hyrule. The lost child grows up to be Tingle. That's a great theory. I only have to wonder if we can find more stories about the lost child / Tingle's teenage years alongside the famed Bagoo fanfiction. Now, I'm going to note that Raikou has made some pretty non-traditional choices in how he's routed this Palace 1. He's chosen not to take 2 different lefts, but he is taking this third one. If this is the item, he'll look like a genius for it, but there's a lot of risk that he's going to have to go back to the earlier parts of the palace. And to answer your question, Phil, This is the last game in the hero is defeated timeline. The timeline splits in 3 at Ocarina of Time, and this is the last game in one of those routes. On the other routes, you'll find, as I recall, Spirit Tracks on one of them and Four Sword Adventures on the third, ending all of those timelines. And I just made an important observation. At Magic 3, the life spell still costs 65 magic to cast. That's very unlucky. That means that our runners are either going to have to take Magic 4 at some point, which is going to fully prevent them from, or it's going to really mess with their leveling, or not be able to cast life for the whole run. As we discover on Raikou's side, the last cave we hadn't seen, the trophy cave, is the raft. That's a pretty important item. So now Raikou has the option to go east. And I actually missed what spell he picked up in Rauru, but if he can't pick up Downstab, then going east very well might be his next play, hoping to get that Jumper Fairy spell. As I believe we've now concluded, though I suppose Raikou has not, that both the trophy and the medicine must be in Death Mountain. So there's not a lot of magic to get over here without a big problem. The shield spell. So shield and life early, definitely the I don't want to die spell list. It looks like Raikou is opting for Death Mountain. Now, most runners won't do Death Mountain early, but this is one of the circumstances where I think there's a strong argument it makes sense. Because there's 2 spells buried in there, and you've already found 2 spells that you know for sure aren't required to beat the game. The odds of trophy or... Oh wait, we found the kid. Never mind. He was just digging around the entrance. Everything I just said is wrong. He's leaving Death Mountain as well he should. Trophy's still over there, but 1 spell item is a lot less compelling than 2. At this point, Raikou still hasn't seen that medicine cave from earlier, but he's seen just about this whole lower area, so he has to know he missed something up top. His only real plausible play here is to either go to Palace 1 or go east. The medicine, based on what we know, could be on Maze Island. It could also be in the East Hyrule Desert spot or in the Ocean Tile. There's 4 places that a spell item in the east could be. Man, Palace 1 is being kinda rude to neerrm. But he manages to get that critical kill on that red Iron Knuckle to survive this room and maybe get a little more attack out of the deal. And this guy. Man, that is a rude place for a blue Iron Knuckle. The only way I've ever really seen to get past him is either to just force your way through with damage like neerrm did, or to push him back to the wall. The rule with the spell items. The spell items have kind of limitations based on the game's sprite sheets, so they can't appear in palaces and they can't appear in New Kasuto. Furthermore, the trophy can only appear in the western part of the world. The 5 spots in the normal West Hyrule, plus the 2 spots in Death Mountain. The medicine or the kid can appear in all of those places, as well as the 4 eastern spots, the desert tile, the ocean tile, and the 2 on Maze Island. But the medicine and the kid occupy the same spot on the sprite sheet, so they have to be on opposite sides. Since we found the kid in the west, the medicine must be in the east. If we'd found the kid or the medicine in the west, the kid would be in the east. Oh man. neerrm's burning the gym, but he has to hate doing it. It's the correct call for sure, though. He spent a lot of time in P1, and he's got to keep moving. Yeah, as right now, our race status basically is Raikou's just setting into Palace 1, while neerrm is going to finish exploring this southern area, which means neerrm should find the hammer and the raft shortly and be ready to make a decision about what to do next. I don't think we've seen Palace 2 yet, so I'm really wondering where that could be. I guess it could be that palace right there. But I'd say neerrm has a bit of a lead here. neerrm's already completed a palace, and neerrm knows for a fact that the medicine cave was just a heart container, so he'll be able to have complete knowledge of the west a little earlier. Though he's choosing to make the bold play of diving into Death Mountain for real this time, and seeing what comes of it. Now, most runners are going to avoid Death Mountain if they at all can, because the simple reality of it is, if you dive Death Mountain and there's nothing useful in it, the amount of time it takes, it amounts to the time it takes to clear a mid-game palace. But if this is something required, it can give him a good early lead. So this is what I would call an aggressive, risky play on neerrm's part. He's just kind of ducking in and out of every cave, hoping to see that telltale row of statues that indicates the hammer cave with an item. As he lucks out and finds a 4-way, doesn't immediately solve his situation, but gives him a lot more possibilities to reach a variety of areas quickly. Though that particular exit there isn't going to help you much without the boots. Looks like he found an exit that gets him close to where the boulder is. I honestly have no idea whether he has the hammer or not. Yep, looks like he does. And it's the trophy. Now, Glove's obviously the holy grail here, and here's the other cave, Quick Death Mountain, which is good luck itself. Right now, neerrm is really hoping that that trophy leads to, ideal case would be the Reflect spell. Thunder would also be a very good find, and Fairy would be a pretty good find as well. As someone who always likes to see the more intricate requirements, I'd really love for this to lead, for the trophy to lead to the spell, but spell to unlock the glove in New Kasuto. That's just my personal hope. And we find everyone's favorite thing in Death Mountain. A red Dyra and a narrow passage. There's really just not much you can do about this other than trade hits with him and hope you can kill him. Luckily, neerrm had the stats to do it. After, of course, checking yet again whether he was able to cast the life spell and concluding that no, he still cannot. And the item is the boots. Boots, overall boots are a pretty good find. If for nothing else, but they make this start screen a lot more palpable. You don't have to go through this bridge encounter anymore. If you up A a bunch of times, the time to find those boots could easily be saved just by that. And there's a real possibility they'll be required in the East regardless. While he's been doing that, Raikou's tied up our gym counter, 1 each. And it'll be a real interesting situation to see what Raikou chooses to do. He takes a level lead as well. Dives back into Palace 1 to pick up the item I believe he was key blocked out of earlier. He'll probably be a bit disappointed to see a heart container, but it's not a long trip for him to confirm that's what it is. Now here's kind of his moment of truth. I believe he's found everything in the south. He still hasn't found Medicine Cave, though he's gonna have to go back north to find that. He could do Death Mountain, he could do 2, he could go east. neerrm has his own moment of truth as he's going to redeem this trophy. The value of this spell will have a big predictive impact on where he stands in this race. neerrm has the resolution first, and it's Fairy. That's really interesting. So, the Fairy spell gives neerrm a long-term solution to lock doors in palaces as his most important effect. There's particular room configurations in 4, 5, 6, and 7, all of which could require Fairy. And Fairy will let him pick up upstab and downstab. Overall, it's definitely worth it to dig Fairy out of Death Mountain, especially early in the game. But this might not be a decisive advantage because Fairy is not strictly required. Often there are seeds where you don't need Fairy, especially if the Master Key is somewhere accessible here in the East. So we're about to see a little asymmetric gameplay while Raikou is going to have the harder gameplay task. No downstab, no Fairy, trying to grind through the Eastern continent. While Raikou's neerrm's investing a little more time in the West, but he's going to have a much better armament to approach the Eastern continent. Raikou finds the not very hidden town of New Kasuto. Discovers 7 magic containers is the requirement. Probably not going to see that item unless it's required. neerrm gets his glove, and we're about to find out what our first spell in the East is. It is the ever invaluable fire spell. fire's not quite worthless, but it's pretty close. Right away, neerrm is taking a different route when he goes to the eastern continent, as he's able to use the boots to reach the southern area pretty quickly. And discover Palace 5 down here, while Raikou's discovered Palace 6 in the more northern areas of this continent. But neerrm save warps all the way back to North Palace. That's a little confusing. Raikou's decision to nope out of Palace 6 and check Maze Island makes a lot more sense to me. As there's two items here on the maze, both can do a lot to help you out. That magic container is going to be a sigh of relief find, just because it means he can cast the life spell he's been holding all this time. Oh, it looks like neerrm forgot to pick up downstab, and then cast fairy in the air. Now, a quirk of the fairy state that you don't realize until you've put a little too much time into this game is that the fairy can only... It stores the state you're in when you cast fairy. If you're standing on the ground, you'll be considered standing wherever you fly, and a standing character can enter a door. If you're crouching, it'll store that you're crouching, and you can enter a chimney in Darunia. If you're jumping, you can do neither of those things. So don't cast fairy while jumping in town. We're already seeing on Raikou's side the downsides of doing the east without downstab. He's really just having to work his way through a lot of trouble. And I don't think we saw Raikou pick up the spell here in Darunia. I'm not sure if he was missing the kid or what. But we are going to see neerrm go for it and use the fairy to pick up the upstab technique. This time using the state storage of the fairy to enter the chimney while crouching. While Raikou takes a painful game over on Maze Island. Maze Island might be the worst place to game over because it's just so far away from the Northern Palace, almost by default. But it's an opportunity to make an adjustment. We'll see what he decides to do next. As we discover, the child redeems for thunder. Another required spell for Raikou, and I thought I saw 51 on that spell cost, but I know that can't be right. Thunder cannot cost 51 at Magic 3. So I'll have to see what it actually costs next time he looks at it. Man, no shortage of red Dairas and passages. While neerrm spends even more time than otherwise required to pick up this fire spell by walking right past the chimney. It's pretty easy to do if you're a note taker because you're used to just holding right in these buildings, and this building requires you to enter a door midway. So if I'm Raikou right now, my top priority would definitely be finding the Reflect spell. You don't really have all that much left to find here in the east, and the Reflect spell would open up the option of Palace 4 for you, making Maze Island a much more efficient trip than it would be otherwise. Kind of looks like that's what he's doing right now, as he just kind of squirms his way around this eastern continent. So far, neither runner has elected to kill the Lizalfos buried in the ground. It's kind of, I don't want to call it a bug in the randomizer. The issue is, in the original game, grass tiles never appeared in the southern half of Eastern Hyrule, so the game's not really sure where to put enemies when they happen. And it just kind of puts them underground.
That's really convenient, though. It makes for very easily leveling grounds.
Oh, it's super convenient. Just not something either runner seems to be prepared to take advantage of in this race.
No, not at the moment, anyway. Maybe they figure their attacks a little too low, take too long to beat them, but when you can just swing away, it certainly doesn't take too long to land 20 or so hits if that's what it ends up taking to beat those Lizalfos.
Welcome, by the way.
Thank you. I'm hopping in a little later than I meant to, but that's life for you.
Yeah, I've been trying to fill it with all the words. People are probably real happy to hear you.
No one's ever happy to hear me. I'm bad news, man. But they're gonna have to deal with it. Ha ha!
We find my personal favorite town, the abandoned town of Old Kasuto. You know, I have never seen what's to the left of the building you enter for Thunder. Have you ever seen what's over there?
I would have been a kid. Looks like we found the spell.
Oh, neerrm was about to show me, and then he changed his mind. Spell could be useful. We already know where New Kasuto is. As long as spell's castable, that's going to be another easy item, and we're kind of running out of glove locations.
It's most likely in one of the palaces that we haven't explored yet. We've seen all the items on the west side now between both players.
Yeah, though I don't think we've seen... the only item in the east I think we've seen is the one Maze Island item. We just found the medicine sitting in that desert tile, so there's 2 more free east items just sitting out.
Mm-hmm. And with the pickup of the medicine, neerrm has all his items covered for spells, so anything he's lacking there, he'll be able to learn when he finds the appropriate town, or in the case of Mido, goes and revisits that a little later on, probably when he's clearing out palaces 2 and 3.
Yeah, if I had to guess, his goal right now is going to be to try to find 2 things that are probably next to each other at this point, Nalbaru and the ocean tile.
I'd say that's a solid guess.
Yeah, he's explored most of the east, so there's not many places those could be, and he's found every other relevant goal. Maze Island, 5, 6, the other towns, the desert tile. Now there's a funny spot for an encounter.
I'd say. We had a very brief high five between both players there, standing on the same force battle tile. And looks like Raikou is just taking it up an A, heading back west there.
You see Raikou in you saw Raikou in Eastern Hyrule? I still see him just kind of wandering the west.
He wasn't there too long. He found the cliff encounters on the desert tile and just took it up an A.
Looks like we have the everyone's favorite town with the thirstiest woman in Hyrule.
Mm-hmm.
This is a 50-50 of Reflect at this point.
I believe that's the last spell that we're looking for.
And instead, it's the other spell we're missing, the Jump spell. Jump's a nice-to-have spell, but let's be honest about it. neerrm really wanted that to be Reflect.
Yeah, it's not too big of a deal, though. He knows where Reflect is for sure now. So he's heading right for Mido to cash in his Fairy Water and pick up Reflect.
And given where he had to go to get that, he's probably confident he's going to find it first, because he had to use the boots to reach that medicine. There might be a connector cave, but that's just going to be slower exploring than what he did.
Mm-hmm. Having gone through Death Mountain early is definitely paying off for neerrm right now, because he does have the boots early on top of being able to take advantage of minimalizing his encounter rate. The boots are also completely required in this seed, because you need them to get the medicine, which you need to get to Reflect, which you need to be K-Rock.
Well, we don't know for sure there wasn't a connector cave up there. It was certainly the efficient way up, though. I mean, I wasn't really seeing where the cave entrances were in the east. I don't know if you were tracking them.
Not particularly well.
Yeah, it looks like Raikou, while we were talking about what neerrm was doing, did just find the kid. We know that's required because that led to the Thunder spell,
Mm-hmm.
and that should be his last West Hyrule item.
Amusingly enough, all three of the spell items give you what are typically the three required spells. You got Fairy from the trophy, you got Thunder from the kid, and now Reflect from the medicine.
Certainly a seed that rewards some early overworld.
Absolutely.
Raikou almost diving in Death Mountain, but again thinking better of it, or perhaps thinking worse of it based on what we know now.
Yeah, Death Mountain is absolutely 100% required. You need the trophy and you need the boots. Well, you might be able to get away without having the fairy spell, but you're generally crazy to pass on the fairy spell in one of these randomizers. The odds of you finding a room where fairy is required to get through are pretty high.
Yeah, like, the seeds I feel happen more often than you'd think, but honestly the time you have to spend paying service to keys alone justifies fairy, and wherever Master Key is, it's probably not somewhere easy at this point.
No, based on what we've seen, it's entirely likely that it could be in Palace 3 or 6, which is honestly a worthless location for the Master Key and the Randomizer, because those are typically the last two palaces you'll go, because the glove is completely required to get through those.
As we see a quick glove block in 2, after getting what I believe was another heart container in there as the item.
That's
so
what it was, yep.
We're running pretty low on glove spots. I don't believe neerrm ever found that ocean tile, and he can still go back to New Kasuto and trade in the spell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've only got 5 possible locations for the glove, if I'm not mistaken. We've got casting spell to reveal the hidden temple in New Kasuto. We have ocean tile. We have the unfortunate 7 magic container requirement in New Kasuto, or Palace 4 or 5.
I believe Raikou only found one of the 2 items on Maze Island, didn't he? He found the magic container and then took a game over?
I'm truthfully not positive. I had to step away for a moment to deal with some work-related stuff while he was on Maze Island.
Yeah, because he took a game over pretty deep on Maze Island. I think he only ever found one of the 2 items there, which was a magic container.
Hmm.
And oh look, there's the ocean tile, right by the raft spot. neerrm had just managed to go everywhere around it before.
That happens sometimes, though.
It's really easy to do, and it's the glove.
And look at that. neerrm has everything he needs, so we should see him start tackling all the palaces in very quick succession here.
So, missing the glove in such an easy location might be stressing neerrm out a bit, but he doesn't know how much time he's really saved from that early Death Mountain. This was best case scenario for him in reality.
I don't think neerrm would be too alarmed for finding the glove a little later than he potentially could have, because he straight up knows that Death Mountain was required at this point, and he went there early, so I don't know the guy particularly well, but I would like to think that he knows that anytime you go through Death Mountain early on and you get rewarded when both items end up being required, usually you're going to be ahead of the other player.
Though, in the interest of competitiveness, we are lucky to see that Raikou has followed neerrm's footsteps into Death Mountain, already has the first item, and is on his way to the second.
Yeah, he's going to grab the trophy and the boots very quickly here. So assuming he can get to his towns pretty quickly, he's not too far behind. And he'll have a very slight edge whenever both players return to Maze Island, as he's already had a bit of a look around there.
And he does have that magic container and the level edge, so that could come into play if they run into sufficiently much nasty stuff in these palaces.
Mm-hmm. I like the play that neerrm just made, casting spell on the dreaded blue iron knuckle.
Spell's one of those funny spells. It's so rarely really useful, but in the circumstances it can help you out, it tends to help you out a lot.
I think it's very underrated. Early spell isn't as powerful as early thunder, but it's more likely that you can cast it without having to pick up a magic container or gain a magic level. And it works on pretty much any threatening enemy that you're going to see early on in the game. It's definitely underrated, and in the vanilla game, it's a very useful tool for getting through the dreaded Valley of Death at the end of the game.
One of these days, they'll have to see and memorize a true full list of the enemy's spell works on. I remember being a little salty when I discovered it didn't work on Lizalfos.
I don't find Lizalfos terribly bad most of the time, so that's usually not much of a concern.
I think it was one of those, a blue Lizalfos in a low-ceiling passage and I don't have downstab. Why don't I just use spell? Oh, that didn't work.
That's certainly a situation where you'd want spell to actually perform its intended function, but sadly, no dice against the blue Lizalfos.
Oh, Raikou has a huge grin on his face finding Fairy. He's been going without downstab for the better part of an hour, and I think he's sick of it.
Yeah, he's got a webcam on his stream there. He definitely looked very pleased to pick up that fairy spell.
Oh, Thunder is only 61. That's fantastic.
That's very, very nice.
I I didn't
See
happen
how
to
much
catch reflex cost.
Neerm uses that to his advantage to get some easy, big experience on some of the Lizalfos encounters that we've seen in East Hyrule.
I mean, from my perspective, even if I never end up actually taking advantage of a low-cost Thunder, just knowing it is just puts my mind at ease in terms of preparing for the end of the game.
Yeah, for sure. Low-cost Thunder is definitely an asset when fighting Thunderbird if you're not confident in your ability to dodge everything, or fight him without jump if you're one of those, if you'll forgive me for saying, crazy people that like to cast jump during the Thunderbird fight.
Well, I'm sorry for being crazy, but I'm not even I'm thinking about the reality that neerrm hasn't found a magic container yet. You don't want to be that guy who's like, I'm ready for Great Palace. Oh wait, I can't afford Thunder.
Yeah, you never want that to happen. I think it's very rare for that to happen to any player. I think you pause the game enough times to cast your life spells or your fairy spells or your shield spells against bosses if you feel it's necessary. You really should notice during one of those pauses, hey, I can't afford Thunder yet. I should do something about that.
Yeah, usually, like, I don't hunt magic containers until I'm absolutely certain I need to, but if I take that last barrage of magic levels and it's not enough, I mean, that's just a risk, you know?
Mm-hmm. And so now we've got neerrm fighting Helmet Head. I'll try not to pronounce his name like that too much. I just look at it and I just think of car noises. Really can't help myself on that. Anyway, pretty solid Helmet Head fight there. No fuss at attack level 3, takes him out. Big points from him.
Yeah, really excessively more than he needed in his situation, but certainly doesn't hurt.
Yeah, and neerrm very responsibly just goes and places his crystal. He's not going to go back and try to grind some extra points to get that attack level 5. No, sir, just place the gem and keep moving. That's typically the best way to go in the randomizer.
Though it does look like neerrm took Magic Force, so he's probably playing the strategy of just not really worry about his levels, and the chips will fall where they may.
Mm-hmm.
It's faster if you can handle it, but if the game overs start adding up, the math changes quickly, so you're betting on yourself, you know?
Exactly. That's what a lot of those 5-6-6, 6-6-7-ish kind of runs can come down to, is personal comfort level with some of the late game areas, some of the late game bosses. Now we got Raikou over on the east side, basically looking for his remaining spells, and then presumably he'll find Ocean Tile along the way, and then he'll be right behind neerrm, starting to tackle the remaining palaces.
Though in terms of the race situation, things are looking pretty good for neerrm. He's already up Palace 2, and it's hard to imagine he won't finish 3 before Raikou finishes finding what neerrm's already found in the east.
Yeah, he's probably close to 2 full gems ahead right now. But it's definitely a longer randomizer in a lot of ways. There's still a lot of race left. Anything can happen. And we still haven't seen any of the more highly variant palaces in action, where it's entirely possible that they'll try different paths getting through, and we could see you could be 2 gems ahead early on, but if their palaces 1, 2, or 3, those are pretty quick gems compared to some of the labyrinthian palaces that 5 and 6 can generate in the randomizer.
Yeah, 6 especially, I feel like you can sometimes take that right drop first and Barba's right there, or you can go the other way and discover 15 minutes of Palace 6 waiting for you.
Mm-hmm. In the
good thing about
randomizer,
Palace 3 for neerrm right now is he is just rolling in keys.
oh yeah, Palace 3 is always great in the tournament settings because you've got, in vanilla at least, you have plenty of easy point bags to grab in 3, but those are all keys in the tournament settings on the randomizer. So as soon as you get that glove and that down stab, if you're really hurting for fairy spells or a master key, it's usually good to try to get into 3 as quick as possible and stock up on keys for the remaining palaces where they're typically a little or a lot more out of the way.
Well, we found the 8th heart container.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you. Whenever I'm in a situation like this with 8 heart containers and no extra magic, I'm usually feeling a little annoyed.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with you there. I'd always rather find a magic container than a heart container in the randomizer. Because most of the time, if you get into a situation where you're going to have a real risk of dying outside of falling into a pit, the shield spell is effectively doubling your life bar by itself. So 4 heart containers is really not a terrible amount if you've got the shield spell. You're much better off with the magic containers to fuel all your magicalness.
In that first magic container especially, there's so many important spells that just often end up in the 65 to 80 cost range. Like I believe both players have discovered at Magic 3, that's where life is, 65.
Mm-hmm. On the more positive side, though, Thunder is dirt cheap. This is always nice to see. But typically, it seems like the spell cost is tweaked in the player's favor, at least on the tournament settings that we typically use in these races.
Well, it's just kind of, you have to think about how the magic tweaking works algorithmically. Because at any given level, it's just randomly plus or minus 50% of the spell cost. But there's a guarantee that if you're the current level would cost more than the level below, it'll go down to the level below.
Mm-hmm.
So over the course of taking a bunch of levels, you only need one level to end up lucky good for all your costs to go down, you know?
That's right. I'm not sure if Dig Shake intended it to work that way, but that is the way that it works currently. I'm not sure if he has any plans to basically have it randomize a set of values for each level and then actually order them by effectiveness, because it seems very rare to have Thunder cost more than 80 at level 1 Magic, because it's picking from a pool of 60 to 120 already at level 1 Magic. So it's rare to see Thunder cost a whole lot, even if you've never leveled up that Magic stat. But if you were to spread the values out, like if you were actually to pick 6 random values between 6 and 120 and then order them in decreasing order, you definitely see some more expensive Thunder spells than what we typically do.
Yeah, and you'd often see the same sort of problems coming up with stuff like Reflect and Fairy, where a big part of the randomizer's meta is that you can usually get away without Magic 4, and you can just pile on that attack without spending a lot of time for it. So it definitely has a big effect the way it works out.
Mm-hmm. That is something that you can get away with, but I think that's really a matter more of personal preference. Some players like the freedom to be able to cast lots of spells or to be able to use Fairy constantly to go through locks, and would rather have a high magic level to help out with that rather than a higher attack. Again, I really don't think there's a perfect solution to it. It's just whatever you particularly feel more comfortable with.
Speaking of particular comfort, we're about to see that neerrm is apparently comfortable with 544 Palace 5. It's perfectly doable.
Oh, absolutely. As far as Palace 5 goes, it's really the attack level that you want to be 5 or above. Guma with attack 4 or lower either takes way too long if you play it safe, or makes it incredibly likely for you to mess up 2 or 3 times and get killed because of how long the battle takes, even if you're trying to be aggressive. But yeah, I don't disagree with neerrm going into Palace 5 at 5-4-4 levels at all. It's definitely the right play here. He's got everything he needs, so he is very rightfully in go, go, go mode right now. Stop for nothing. Place every gem.
Yeah, he knows Palace 6 and Maze Island are right by each other, so take care of this. It's just more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of the Guma fight, normally I just kind of groan at heart containers, but when you have all of them, that's probably an extra hit. I don't know exactly how much your life Guma drains at life 4.
Yeah, I haven't exactly memorized the damage tables on that myself, but I know unless you actually straight up have life 7 or life 8, it's taken off at least 3 containers per hit. I think you can do as much as 5 or 6 if you're at life level 1. It's definitely a very potent attack. It's right up there with Thunderbird's fireballs.
As neerrm discovers what so many randomizer players have discovered in this tournament, that is not the walk-through wall.
It takes a little bit of time to really get used to what that dead end looks like in the randomizer. You're either going to see a skull or an orange moa and one large enemy right when you walk in the room. If you see that and no pillars, you know it's a dead end and you should turn around.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance to it because you have that room, you have the walk-through wall, and then you have the room that doesn't have a wall, just the big open pass-through.
Yeah.
And there's tells between all 3 of them, but they are subtle.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's even some players in the tournament that didn't find out until probably a couple of rounds in that you can actually tell which palace you're in by looking at the totem pole at the top of the pillar. Because the colors are randomized, and I think most players were used to just looking at the color of the palace, but there's definitely a few that did not know about that different totem pole head for each palace. So
even the pillar's texture itself, it's paired with the totem, because that's always the rule I use. The smooth pillars are palaces 2 and 5. The ones cut into strips are 3 and 6, and then the third pattern's 1 and 4.
Yeah, that certainly works too. If the brick pattern wasn't randomized, that's another tell that you could go on, but that and the color of each palace is randomized, so that's a no-go.
I have a strong feeling that in the next version of the randomizer after this tournament finishes, you're going to see a fix for this pillar thing.
I'm not entirely positive because that was definitely a feature of the original game. I think that's something that Dig Shake either will do or won't do.
Oh, I mean, he's just probably going to randomize which pillars are where.
Oh yeah, I would not put something nasty like that past Dig Shake at all. Or he'd just make them all the exact same pillar, just to mess with you.
He'll make them all the Palace 3-6 pillars, and you'll just feel glove anxiety the whole time you're playing.
Yeah. Basically force you to go through a couple of rooms to see which palace that you're in.
I know Dig Shake, speaking of possible features, I know Dig Shake was talking about adding helpful hints to the random useless townspeople banner. That I've taught you all you can know line would be a funny place for one.
What's that? Oh,
that
dude,
line,
the wall skeleton! Oh man, that's amazing.
You know that upstab guy when you talk to him again the second time on accident?
Oh yeah.
Wouldn't that be a funny place for information?
Yeah, you accidentally talked to him twice. This is the exact path through Great Palace.
In Great Palace, go left, right, right, left.
Yeah, something like that. Well, we've got neerrm coming up on Guma here.
Pretty average Palace 5, I'd say. He saw a lot of it, but he also didn't see a lot of it.
Yeah, I think Palace 5 has 32 unique rooms. We saw maybe half of those, so that's fairly typical. Not quick, but not aggravating either. And neerrm is fighting Guma in a semi-aggressive manner here, doing pretty good so far.
Yeah, he's only going for the one-hit-a-cycle strat, but he's choosing not to push Guma into the corner with the cheese him strats. Usually this is how I fight Guma. It's fast enough, but it's also not really that risky.
If you're only going for one hit per cycle, I think it might be a little faster to try the cheese strats and land 2 hits a cycle, personally. If you're going for an aggressive Guma fight, you should really just be trying to get inside that hitbox and mash on the jackhammer. Definitely risky, but it will take him out very quickly, even at attack level 5.
Or in this case, attack level 6.
Yeah,
that is the interesting thought with this Palin sequence, because I was thinking about how his experience could be thrown off by that high magic level, but if he does 5 and 6 next, that's not really a factor. Those palaces tend to be very experience rich.
Yeah, he's got 4 and 6 remaining. Believe we saw in 3 what some of the enemies were giving for experience yield there. I want to say that the red iron knuckles were 200, but I might be confusing that with the 125 group of palaces there, so don't quite quote me on that.
Yeah, that's one of those things that I always take real careful note of if I'm racing and not much note of if I'm not. Oh, the magic container that I don't even think he was looking for. That's just always so nice. When you're not looking for Maze Island's items and you just happen to, by coincidence, find a useful one.
Yeah, that's just a nice little gift there. It certainly helped him get to Palace 4 quicker, because 5 containers enabled him to cast Fairy twice, and neerrm very solid with the Fairy Feet trick there, skipping those forced battle tiles.
And this is really an opportune time to have extra magic for a player, because Palace 4 tends to be pretty harsh on your keys, while at the same time you need Reflect at the end.
And neerrm has found the candle bag inside Palace 4. He's going to take a life level and then just head back to the start. It's faster than walking through the couple of rooms it took him to get there. Smart play. And meanwhile, we got Raikou over in number 3.
Taken probably the slowest key in the palace. But you never know what circumstances will arise later. It could prove worth it.
It could definitely end up paying off come time to go through Palace 6, where keys are definitely at a premium, as well as magic.
Yeah, nothing's worse than 6, and ferrying through a door, finding a drop, dropping, and then seeing the fairy room you have to pass into.
Well, what's far more unpleasant in 6 is ferrying through a door, finding a door in the next room, turning around and the door's still there, you're out of magic, and there's nothing in between those 2 doors that can kill you, so you're forced to take an up A. That's particularly not fun. At least if you find one of the rooms where you're going to need to use a fairy to get across, you could use a death abuse or something to refill your magic. And
well, I was thinking of the drop room where you drop past it and you have like more than half the palace to get back there. But your circumstances just as bad.
Yeah, finding the drop room whenever you're out of magic is very painful. You almost generally want to check how much magic you have left before you take any drops in Palace 6 for that reason. Because you really don't want to miss checking that exit that you need the fairy spell to get across.
I think the moral of the story we're hammering home is running out of magic in Palace 6 sucks.
Yeah, don't do it. It's not good.
And I'm feeling relatively confident that we're not going to see the Master Key by the end of this run. Because at this point, it has to be in what? New Kasuto or Palace 6?
Well, so far, neerrm has been picking up extra items inside palaces that he didn't need to. He found both the item rooms in 3 and 4 and could have just as easily turned around or taken the up A right away, but he took the extra 15 to 20 seconds to walk through the room and pick up the item first. So it's at least possible if the key does end up being in 6, we could see him find the item room, since that also involves going right, just like with the boss, and perhaps walk a little too far, get stuck into the combat with the mini-boss Rebenak, and then at that point be like, well, 5 more seconds to walk to the right and pick up whatever it is, why not?
And yeah, we've seen that New Kasuto's pretty close to 6 if he's really item hungry, but walking all the way for that spell item would seem to be a little much.
Yeah, especially when there's basically absolutely nothing mandatory left. Unless he feels really desperate for magic containers or really just wants that any key for 6, I think it's extremely unlikely to see him ever set foot in another town.
Right now, it's looking like he's seen the overwhelming majority of Palace 4.
Yeah, we're definitely approaching full clear territory here. Finally found the drop rooms, so Karok has to be at one of these entrances here. And Raikou getting a little trolled by Rebenak. He's within downstab range, but not quite at the zone where you can actually damage him. Losing a little bit of time on that, but that's basically outside of your control when you're playing the safe strats.
Raikou
another
finally
boss fight on the other side. neerrm fighting Karok. And, oh man, he died. I don't know what happened there. I don't think he was quite playing the game as hard as he maybe could have played.
He really should have just cast the fire spell. I think it might have helped him out.
Well, he could have, swung his sword. I mean, it's just a wizard. You think a sword strike could take him down, or maybe 2 of them or something. But no, we can stop being coy. That was an intentional death because he was out of magic. Couldn't cast Reflect. You need Reflect to beat Karok. That's the only reason you need Reflect. Still a useful spell here and there, but yes, Reflect.
And this pretty much just solidifies that, yes, Raikou is up 2 full palaces. Or not Raikou, neerrm is up 2 full palaces.
And they're not exactly cheapies neither. 6 right down there. Little bit of a roundabout path through the forest to get there, but we're in.
We have what might be my least favorite block set for 6. Makes lining up those Rebo fights just that much more annoying.
Well, I never like seeing that set of bricks anywhere. You're going to see it at least once, but they're just so tiny. The screen looks like it's shaking, flashing all over the place whenever it moves along to follow your character. It's gross, man. It is
Yeah, no one
nasty.
likes these bricks, but if they're gonna exist, I'd prefer they be in like 2 or something where it doesn't really matter, you
Yeah,
know?
you're not trying to line up, say, the downstab for Revenak, or if you're brave enough to try Nico Key, you're not trying to line up where you want to start that jump, and so
Or
forth.
trying to figure out, I think people call it the Canadian jump, that horrible
the Canadian
room.
hole. Oh man, I do not like that place. But often in the randomizer, the room with the Canadian hole can often be the key to finding Barba quickly. Because the way that the guarantees work in these palaces is that anytime that there's a wall of blocks that you need the glove to get through, you're guaranteed to find a way back to the start of the palace so that you can get out without using an up and A. So if you were to say fall into a room that's glove blocked, like if you're in this palace, if you're falling into a room and the only way out is to the left, you found one of those dead ends, but it's the one where you need to break the bricks. Chances are that you're on the right path because you can't go back up that hole. So there must be another exit through the blocks, or a loop going back to the start that you haven't seen.
Yeah, I don't think the glove walls have a particular guarantee associated with them that I know of, but the drops definitely do.
Yeah, it's whenever you factor in a drop that glove walls end up having a guarantee like that. So it really only comes into play in Palace 6.
Because there's that one room in 6 you can drop into. You can possibly be glove blocked right into it because the drop is a glove block room, you know?
Yeah, you can be forced to up an A in that room, but once you're past that room, if you're on the correct path, you'll find the boss soon enough, or if you're on the wrong path, there'll be a loop to take you back to where you could fall back down to that room. And you kind of have the same deal with the Canadian hole room, except that the wall of bricks is on the other side of the hole.
Yeah, I actually use the whole thought and Great Palace of drops where I'm like, I know it's guaranteed I can either reach the boss or the entrance after the drop. So if it's relatively early, why wouldn't I take a drop? It'll either lead me deeper in the dungeon toward the boss, or it'll pull me back here.
Yeah, it's usually not a bad idea to take drops early on in the Great Palace. There's really no risk in doing it. It's once you get past Thunderbird where you're really risking taking a drop, especially if you've seen one of the landing zones prior to Thunderbird. Chances are you're just sending yourself back.
Yeah, though I always hate that feeling, and I'm usually right about it. When I've seen a lot of the Great Palace, I have 2 drop rooms and 1 drop destination left to find. I just know the drop destination I haven't seen is what leads to Thunderbird, or Darklink as it may be, and the other one leads to the beginning of the palace. I lose that 50-50, 90% of the time.
Raikou having a little bit of trouble with that blue iron knuckle in Palace 2, but he's past him this time.
Meanwhile, neerrm is just kind of cutting through Palace 6 like a knife through hot butter. Not a whole lot's getting in his way, and these enemies are very experience-rich for him.
Bit of a nasty room there with a blue iron knuckle on one side and a doom knocker on the other. And he's forced to take an intentional death to refill his magic there, as we found the fairy lava room.
neerrm taking a bit of a risk there and not rolling on the statue for a potential magic refill after casting Jump. It looks like he's going to have to drop, so
Yep.
will we see one of those nightmare scenarios we were talking about earlier?
Hopefully not. He's fairly deep in the palace now. It almost... Oh, he could take a magic level here. Yeah. He's going to take that, so he should be safe now. He was thinking exactly that. So that...
Oh.
Well... So we found a very tiny loop in Palace 6, so he's not going the correct way here.
Honestly, I almost wonder if upon seeing that loop, he should have just hit up A, because we know he has a bit of a trek to get back to everything else.
And the force casting of Fairy also. There's also another fairly nasty scenario that could happen here in Palace 6. You can still fall into that room with the two holes that he jumped over and found a dead end and then fell into and found the same dead end. There's still a way to fall into that room from the top, and that's going to make any more holes that he goes into on purpose just that much less comfortable to jump into.
Though at this point, he's running a little low on holes to start falling into, so he's really got to be thinking about the destinations that remain.
Mm-hmm.
Right here, we have that fairy room.
Yeah, so you approach it from the left in this case.
I'd probably just take this drop right now, knowing if this is the one that's wrong, I gotta up A.
Yeah.
Oh well, these things happen.
There's still another room that you can go to the right if you fall through. He's found the other dead end here, so he's at least on a different set of holes now. We're seeing some new rooms here.
Yeah, out of his 3 possibilities, this is what I'd say is the neutral one. You're not thrilled to see it, but it's not the one that crushes you.
No. This is definitely not a friendly Palace 6 layout at all.
Though they seldom are. In my experiences, at least, Palace 6 tends to be the nastiest palace. 5's bigger, but...
I personally think 5 is usually more of a pain to get through than 6.
It's kind of the question of what affects you more, the maze or the size, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Dick Shake casting his likely lonely vote for Palace 4.
Well, I can see Palace 4 for sure, because it seems so common. Like, I would say 90% or more. Every Palace 4 that shows up in these randomizer, you will always find the 3 dead-end key rooms before you find either the item or K-Rock. It just seems to happen every single time.
Yeah, that seems a little annoyingly common. But it's a small palace. I do 4 as my second palace pretty often.
I've done it as my first quite a few times too. I mean, if you have Reflect, the boss is free and you can hide from some of the scarier enemies. It's just, the navigation can be frustrating at times. I wouldn't say it's the worst. It's not comparable to 5 or 6 in terms of either length or possible maze-like layout. But it certainly can and does troll.
We have what always seems to happen to me against Barba, where you're just kind of prepared to fight him in the right pit or the middle pit, and you get the left pit 5 times in a row.
Yeah, unfortunate RNG there, but the smart way to play it is to stick to the right and center pits, because you can manipulate him to come out of the far right pit if you enter the room correctly. neerrm did lose momentum on the jump up to the lip of the lava pool there, so he did leave the first Barba spawn up to the RNG instead of the guaranteed right side there.
Now, neerrm just made a little experience mistake on his last gym, where he skipped the level and then took life 6, when he could have just taken life 6 from Barba and taken whatever the gym gave him for his next level.
Yeah, he could be 666 now instead of 656, but he's got enough magic to cast all of his spells, so it's probably not the biggest deal in the world, unless Thunder is suddenly really cheap, or it cuts the cost of life in half, or a real game changer like that. Otherwise, he's pretty much limited to what he would have had normally. The odd casting of shield, maybe one casting of life, a forced death on finding Thunderbird, and then Thunder and probably nothing else to fight the boss.
Yeah, it's probably not going to prove a decisive factor, but it does possibly add just a little more difficulty to what could already be a pretty challenging Great Palace at 656, depending on the layout he gets.
Oh. neerrm not quite getting the fairy feat there for this last forced tile.
So it looks like he got a very favorable enemy layout in that one.
Yeah, and he just barely had enough MP to cast fairy a second time on that life, because he was down to his last life with getting sniped by the Moa and then taking an intentional death to refill MP. But he made the smart play and just flew right through the room, being on his last life. No more chances at fairy feet. You gotta take the slow way, because you gotta get there. You don't want to be game over and then walking back from North Palace. No, sir.
Oh, this room, it's always so scary. The subtle scary, when you're in one of those, some people are calling them honeycomb rooms with the jar, and you break your way up through it, and you don't realize it's the one with the jar, and you get a bird night.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to pretty much just die when that happens.
So we've got Thunderbird showing up very early on in Great Palace, only 4 rooms in.
Really a pretty great place for him.
It's usually better to find Thunderbird early, because on the off chance you're not having much luck with your combat and you do end up game over and you don't have to go so far to get back to him.
It also means for the rest of the palace, your anxiety about conserving your magic versus lives is just a lot lower, because
you're not having to save magic to cast that all-important Thunder spell to start the battle. You can just go willy-nilly on shield and life spells to get through the palace. So a relatively clean Thunderbird fight there for neerrm, and now he's off to the maze. Will we find Dark Link very quickly, or is Great Palace gonna troll? Let's find out.
We have a fork here, so there's potential for a very short GP. We find the first drop room dead end right there, and I never like seeing those dead ends in like the 4th room of the palace. Because when I see them, I just know I'm going to see them again, and it's going to cost me a lot of time.
Yep, whenever you see that room early on, it makes falling down a hole a very risky proposition.
Like, honestly, I would drop right now while I'm close, just to know if that's that drop or not.
I think I would make the same play on the bridge in this case too, just because of how close that room is. If it does end up sending me back, it's not sending me back too far. And if it doesn't send me back, chances are you're on the right path, because 2 out of 3 of the remaining drops are simply down and to the right, so Dark Link could be right there.
And even if you're not required to take the drop, there's a good chance it'll put you just way deeper in the palace, so it'll be a shorter route.
Mm-hmm. We've already got a whole bunch of people in chat already claiming that EON drop is probably the direct path to Dark Link.
Though, based on what's happened in previous races, they would probably claim that's the path to Dark Link, no matter what they'd seen in the Great Palace.
Mm-hmm. We've got neerrm going through the Jackamus room, as Angry Larry's come to call it. And, hey, Dark Link could be just to the right, and he is. He was
so
right in the
I would have wasted a lot of time taking
happens.
that drop.
It always happens. If I'm playing or if I'm doing commentary, Dark Link is to the right of that Jackamus room.
Yeah, I so would have taken that drop. Oh, Darklink's trolling. Will we get the 130? Oh, we do.
Very nice. neerrm finishing with a time of 1 hour, 29 minutes, and 44 seconds. Very respectable time for this randomizer.
Yeah, I feel like sub 90 minutes is about what you need to be in the ballpark to really make a threat at a deep run in this tournament, you know?
Yeah, consistent sub 90s, I would say, are basically what all the top tier players in the tournament get most of the time. And the tournament actually is starting to wind down here. I think we've only got, I think we're down to our final 12 players between the winner's bracket and the bonus bracket now.
I'd have to look, but we're pretty narrow. We have 4 of us up top, and I guess 11 in the bottom right now, if we factor in the result of this match.
Hello, hello.
Good evening.
So, I'm going to start by asking you about the main things I thought stood out in this race. What are your thoughts on Death Mountain?
That was a very friendly death. That's probably the friendliest Death Mountain I've ever encountered. I don't know if that's because I got lucky or if that's because, you know, having the cave item be right next to the fall item is super nice.
And having, you know, boots be required and super helpful. And then, I don't know if we confirmed Fairy was required, but it sure helped a lot.
Yeah, it was definitely required in 6, but I feel like if you get to 6, you probably had Fairy anyway.
Fairy actually wasn't required in this seed. It wasn't required to get through 6.
Really?
Maybe the lava room led to a dead end, and the typical room where you'd fall and cast Fairy, you approached from the left and then fell down to go the correct way. So this was one of those rare-ish seeds where you could have gotten away with skipping the Fairy spell entirely.
So I do remember in 5,
that's
the eco
not
key room was
something that you want to do, because infinite keys at the cost of a bit of magic really can't be overstated.
Yeah, and the fact that any key was in 6 doesn't help anything either.
Mm-hmm. But what really pulled you ahead, as Ampharos had alluded to earlier there, oh no, Raikou finished 4, but jumped over the spot to place the gem and left the palace.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Does he realize it?
He headed right back in, so I think he did.
Ouch. That's super unfortunate.
Yeah. Not pleasant. Perhaps a little distracted now that if he's checking IRC, he certainly knows that he has not won this race.
I mean,
But that's never something that you want to see. And anyway, got a little distracted there for a moment. Yeah, neerrm, what really worked out well for you was that early run through Death Mountain. You got the boots considerably quicker than RaikouRider did, and with that leading to effectively all the required spells plus the glove, you were about 2.5 palaces ahead whenever Raikou first entered 3, which was the second one that he tackled. You were basically approaching Guma in Palace 5 at that time.
Yeah, that was a bit rough. I guess I kind of lucked out. I figured, I had Hammer early, and I was looking for Raft at the time, and Raft was either in the cave I hadn't found yet, or it was on Death Mountain, and I already had the Hammer, so I figured, why not? I'll jump into Death Mountain, and then and then one of those other items was Trophy too. So
I think you made the right call there. If you do have the Hammer early on, it seems more often than not that's basically a big hint telling you, dude, go to Death Mountain. The Raft is in there somewhere. So I think you made the right call there, but it ended up being the boots and the trophy definitely gave you a very, very big advantage early on in the race.
Yeah, considering the starting, I guess the configuration of where the starting palace was.
Yeah,
really well.
That was
a
terrible
fairly obnoxious spot there.
Though, another big factor in terms of the early game, like, early on you both chose to go north instead of south, but Raikou missed the medicine cave, whereas the cave you ended up missing for a while was the cave with the raft. So in your case, what you missed early led you to find all the right stuff, whereas what Raikou missed early led him to have to make repeat trips through areas.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I did kind of get lucky if I take a step back and look at it. It was also a little disconcerting when I went through 1 through 3, and I'm like, oh, these are all hearts. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Were you concerned when you were in that situation, though? Like, 8 heart containers, no extra magic containers?
I was definitely hoping to find at least one, which I got incredibly lucky finding on Maze Island just happening on through. Just because I knew Thunder was 61, so I could cast it, but then Thunderbird would eat my face. So having Shield and Thunder and Thunderbird, eases my heart a little bit. But yeah, glove on water tile. Like I guess I kind of walked past it for a long time. I just never found water tile, and then so when I had actually stumbled upon it, I was like, oh man, I could have had this 20 minutes ago. So I was a little concerned that I would potentially be behind at that point, just because it was just something I had overlooked.
Yeah, that was a topic we certainly noted when it happened. I thought you might have been a little concerned, though we obviously knew you were well ahead because the Death Mountain dive was worth so much more than finding the water tile was in the end. Because Raikou lost a lot of times trying to slog through the East Continent without boots, without downstab.
Ooh, yeah.
Because that
I almost tried to do without downstab. Yeah. For whatever reason, like in races, I tend to forget that, with Fairy, I can actually go get downstab. I don't know what it is. I'm like, I need jump for downstab, and then it doesn't click in my brain. I don't know, I get it with Fairy until I don't know. It's one of the silly hang-ups I have.
Yeah, I've heard a couple of people say stuff like this in this tournament. It's a little strange to me, the forgetting downstab. That would seem to be the first thing on your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so essential, but...
Well, I think the thing about forgetting that you can get downstab is more the fact if you find Fairy before jump. If you're particularly used to running the vanilla game, you'd always be getting downstab with the jump spell because Fairy's a screen further ahead in the town. It's faster to do it that way. You'd never be flying up there in regular old Zelda 2.
Yeah, I guess prior to randomizers, I never really speedrun Zelda 2 at all. So my only experience with the game is what I played as a kid. God knows how long ago. So it's been really interesting to go through this and try and improve a little bit.
Raikou's picked up the any key inside of Palace 6. Useful item.
Yeah, at this point, it's hard to imagine Raikou would even care to find anything else. He's healthy on both containers, and he has all the useful items.
Yeah, looks like he's managing his experience much better than I did. I was just kind of like, oh, I gotta go, and I'm not gonna farm. You know, finishing 656 definitely not ideal, but hey, it worked.
I mean, 656 is not ideal, but you didn't really get hung up from it at any point.
No, not at all.
Yeah, the fact that GP was as short as it was really, I guess, kind of made levels not that important.
Yeah, I'm guessing you were, given that you were at a somewhat low level, you were very relieved to see Thunderbird in the third room.
Actually, I guess I didn't really think about it. I typically don't like finding Thunderbird early just because that means you can walk on the other half for like an hour and a half and you could just end up looping around. So I guess in a general sense, I prefer Thunderbird to be late just because that way I know I'm going the right direction. I don't have to get all kinds of lost. But yeah, I guess thinking back on it in my situation where my levels weren't that great, it's definitely a good thing that he was early. But fortunately, he didn't give me too much trouble.
Yeah, no, you had a pretty clean Thunderbird fight there for attack level 6. I think you only got hit twice over the whole course of the battle, so really nothing to be too concerned about there. And yeah, maybe your experience management wasn't quite on the level of Raikou, but your willingness to just keep going, don't stop for nothing, that's definitely going to end up being faster in the long run as long as you can deal with having lower levels. I won't necessarily say suboptimal because that's going to vary quite a bit from seed to seed, but if you can do it at the lower levels, it's generally going to be faster to just stop at nothing and just go, go, go.
Yeah, that's true. That's one of the things when I first started running this, I was so bad at the game that I needed like every level I could get because, I'm sure you saw me mess up a lot going through and getting owned by like the most trivial things. But
we've all been there in Rando, trust me.
But
this seed in particular, red Dairas in narrow passages.
Yeah, I felt extremely lucky to get past him the second round. He was in a really bad spot in Death Mountain there.
Raikou found another one in the jump cave.
Oh boy.
But yeah, looking forward, neerrm, you're going to be playing King Doll in your next match. Any thoughts on that one?
So I feel like King Doll is going to be an interesting race because just in like I guess like the random races that we've done, there have been times where he's beat me by 25 minutes, and there have been times where I beat him by like 15 minutes. So I definitely think he's a better player than I am, but it doesn't necessarily rule me out of the picture. I just sometimes he struggles. I've seen the over 2 hour times, and of course I've had my own over 2 hour times, but it's going to be interesting. I think I have a chance. I'd give myself maybe like a 20% chance, but
I think you're selling yourself a little short on 20% there. King Doll's definitely a great player, but I think you're pretty good at this too there, neerrm. I'd really say that one could go either way. I'm hoping for a close race whenever you guys get around to it, though I know that'll be a lot more stressful on the both of yous.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, you got to look at this seed and what you really did in it. Like, this was a seed where you had to go to Death Mountain early, and you saw most of 4 and 6, and sub 130. That's a competitive time.
Yeah, this was a PB for me by about 7 minutes, but that's mostly thanks to GP being 4 minutes long.
Yeah, it's always nice whenever you have a nice, relaxing, short Grand Palace at the end of a seed.
Come to think of it, I don't think I saw a single bird night.
Man, that's just a shame. I always hate not seeing those guys.
Yeah, I can't. I don't think I can ever say I've never seen a bird night in GP before.
Oh, I've had a couple of seeds like that. I remember probably the instance of the literal 4-room Great Palace that sticks out to me the most is a race that myself and Jay Coper did close to a year ago now. This was back when there wasn't even a short Great Palace option. It had all 57 rooms in it all the time. And the first room, once you went down the elevator, was a junction that you could have gone left or right. If you went right, there was Thunderbird and Darklink in rooms right back to back, just like that. 4-room Great Palace, done. Nothing. Like, not even a single regular enemy was in the path. It was just 2 bosses and done.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a Great Palace like that on my own when I was running a practice seed about a month back, and I was so annoyed because the whole seed had been just a horrible troll seed, and then I was like, man, this Great Palace is wasted on this seed? Put this on a normal seed, and this is an easy PB.
Yeah. Well, that's just the thing about the randomizers, though, is that you can't focus too much on what your personal best run is, because oftentimes that's going to be a lot more seed dependent than skill dependent. What you really want to look at, if you're bothering to actually track all your stats, is probably your average time, to give you an idea of how well you're doing relative to one player or another.
Yeah.
But then again, the seeds can be highly variable, and no 2 players are ever really going to have played the same seeds as each other, so you need a pretty big sample size to say for sure if one average time is better than another. So that's why we have the races, because that's the only way to decide it. You got to win the race. That's the only way.
Yeah. Yeah. I've definitely seen people who compare against average. That definitely seems like a better way to test against your, I guess, a more feasible comparison. And it looks like Raikou actually got killed by the Doom Knocker in the room right before the boss room, and then when he respawned, it just shoved him down the hole.
Yeah, that... I'd be salty.
That was pretty bad.
I don't think he'll be too salty once he realizes that he's going the right way, though.
True.
I think he's seen enough of 6 that he knew he was going the right way, though. This is probably the last remaining path. But yeah, there's only one other thing I had to ask you about neerrm.
Sure.
So, how many times did you estimate over the course of the first part of the run did you check to try to cast life and it was still 65?
A lot. There's about every magic drop. I'm like, oh, I could cast life and wait. I don't know.
I actually have another question here for you, neerrm, and
Sure.
I would have asked you this before now, but this is my first time actually commentating on one of your races. Is it a car noise or an airplane noise?
It's a cheap NES power supply noise.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, like that electronic buzzing in your ears kind of is.
Yeah. Yeah. Were you hearing that from a game audio, or do you hear it from my microphone now? Because there's 2 different things that are happening. One of them is my computer fans, which are super loud, and if you heard it on my audio, then it's.
No! I wasn't talking about your audio. I was talking about your name. You know, neerrm.
Oh, I see. No, so there's an origin story. Way back when I was young, this is probably, it's 2016, probably about 15 years ago, right when Gmail came out, and back when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, they required a six character username, and I used to go by neerrm, nerim, and that's only 5, and I needed to like lengthen it out so it would fit for the Gmail account name, and thus neerm was born. Don't ask me how. I was like 12 years old.
And it just kind of stuck with you.
Yep.
Well, that's a cool little origin story there. Thanks for sharing that with everyone.
No problem.
It's
You can thank Google.
What has
it's
Google
slightly
ever done
cooler
for
than
you?
my origin story, though it also involves being 12.
I think it might be Pokemon related. I'm just not sure.
Yeah, I'll have to ask RaikouRider if he has any opinion on alliterating Pokemon nicknames related to second generation electric types.
A little bit in common there. He's got the rarer one though.
I'm trying very hard to place the reference, but I'm not really familiar with the Pokemon games past the red and blue stuff.
Both Ampharos and Raikou were electric types introduced in Gold, Silver, and Crystal.
Oh, okay. I see what's going on there now.
And both our handles alliterate because RaikouRider is both R's. Amazing Ampharos is both A's. I always knew I liked the guy.
Alrighty, guys. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and duck out, but thanks for commentating. I've got some things I gotta take care of, and hopefully Raikou's able to finish up here without too much trouble. Looks like he's motoring right along.
Yeah, motoring right along through Palace 5. He'll be right behind you at the finish line in no time. Thanks for dropping in for an interview. Congratulations again on your victory, and wishing you all the best of luck against King Dal whenever you guys get around to that one.
And yeah, this is what I was seeing in Palace 5, though. To talk about Raikou's run just a little bit, I believe that Eco Key Room is required in 5. So if you skip Fairy, you could do it. It's possible.
Yeah, I guess. Is this the proper way? I don't remember seeing the Eco Key Room whenever neerrm went through here.
I remembered seeing it. It was real early. They found the same dead end through that Eco Key Room, didn't they? I remember saying something.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, I was pretty sure that it wasn't required there.
But yeah, looks like you were right. Fairy not strictly required, but extraordinarily helpful.
Yeah, with the Master Key being buried deep into 6, really hard to go without Fairy on this one, unless you're stockpiling keys the whole way and taking the right paths through the palaces so as not to waste, say, 3 keys to find, oh, it's a dead end and I'm down 3 keys.
Or, well, hey, I found the item. It's the cross.
Yeah. And in chat, Link7 is saying that the Eco Key is hard in Rando, and I agree, because you have no guarantee that you're going to have that slow skull right at the top, so you can set up the typical jump that everyone does in a vanilla speed run. The skull might be moving too fast to the point where you're jumping around blind, hoping for the best. There might not even be a single skull in that room, and you're stuck with Moas, and you just might be completely out of luck. Though I don't doubt with some sort of voodoo wizardry, it's possible to get the Eco Key boost off of a Moa instead. I just don't want to imagine setting up that little semicircle arc it does to be just slightly outside the left edge of the vertical shaft and then timing a jump. And yeah, no, don't do it. It's not fun times.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential in this game in general to save time with clever damage boosts to avoid having to cast stuff like Jump or Fairy, but they're all hard tricks. Like, I know you can make it up the Jump Cave without Jump, but it's hard.
That's both time-consuming to set up and difficult to execute. It's not something I see anyone doing outside of a task run anytime soon. And then there's quite a few other skips that you could do to skip casting a spell. Not necessarily faster, but possible, and I'd say some of those are strictly tasks only. Like, say, getting across that big lava room in Palace 6. Theoretically, it's possible to do it if you have task precision and a low enough attack level to not kill the skulls before you basically sword bounce your way through the entire room, pixel by painstaking pixel.
And I thought the Jump Cave was unreasonable to do without Jump.
Yeah. That was something that I was tempted to do a few years ago, just to kind of show how it would be, in a very loose theoretical way, possible to do, but I just never got around to making a quick task, or perhaps not so quick task for that room for one reason or another there.
Though, something that I'm kind of sad that the newer versions of the randomizer don't ever do, as we see Raikou head toward, presumably, the Great Palace.
Yep, he's off and running there. And he'll have some nice, shiny new experience levels to help him out.
Those lava rooms on the way to GP, don't you remember in the older versions of the randomizer where you might randomly have to do them in the early game without...
Yeah, they used to be just kind of scattered all over the place. But I think the one issue with that is that you would basically never step on a lone lava tile in the earlier versions of the randomized overworld, because you would know,
I meant pre-random overworld.
In the pre-randomized overworld, yeah, where there's just so many narrow places on East Hyrule, and those could show up anywhere. Yeah, there could be some really nasty combinations there. But then again, you might never, ever see one of these screens here in the old overworld, because it wasn't uncommon to, say, cross the raft over to the new continent, walk into the town, there's Great Palace, walk into the forest tile, there's Palace 5, walk into the cave, there's Palace 6, walk onto the little desert tile, there's the bridge to Maze Island, got everything I need, let's finish this thing off, you know?
Yeah, that certainly could happen. But you could also end up with the other case where the raft leads you below the River Devil, you don't have the horn, heading south is one of those Death Road encounters, and then you realize that both Jump and Fairy are on the other side of it.
Yeah, there were actually a lot of really interesting things that can happen on the vanilla overworld map, and I know myself and a couple other people were talking about bringing just the regular map back for a couple of fun races here and there, so that's something I'm looking forward to hopefully doing with a couple of people, probably in the weeks after the tournament's over there, just to fool around, have some fun, you know? Or maybe just in between tournament races, if enough people are up for that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's always, I mostly just enjoy telling stories about how that all worked, because, you know, it's like you think the randomizer does mean things now.
Oh, yeah, it was much nastier until it got as robust as it is now. Like, the master settings that aren't being used for the tournament here, because we have the tournament flags, which are slightly easier than that. Like, those master flags were tame compared to what the Iron Knuckle difficulty on earlier versions of the randomizer was. That was just torture the whole way through.
Like, it was so common to start in a place where your only option was to go through multiple hard connectors with the butter knife sword that took 20 hits to kill an Octorok.
Yeah, it was not uncommon to even reach attack level 4 and still only be doing 1 or 2 actual damage per sword hit, and you'd still be swinging 20 to 30 times to kill, like, a red Moblin or something like that. Yeah. The friendly settings have been balanced out a little bit since then. The challenge level was certainly very interesting, though. It seemed like on average a seed would take 2 hours back in those days. You'd spend the first hour dying over and over again and just painstakingly getting started, and then the last hour would basically be, all right, time to tackle palaces, let's try to finish this thing up.
Yeah, I remember I was figuring out how to Zelda 2 at the same time. Powerful teacher that it was. But, you know, the early game, like, how do I even get started? Then once you manage that, you hit the Great Palace, and you're like, oh, great, this.
Link Sevens in chat is talking about something that happened fairly often, too. Good old days of having to start by going through Death Mountain. Oh, you started on, say, the Palace 3 island? Well, guess what? Death Mountain's forced, and you don't got a candle. Have fun.
Yeah, and nothing really makes Forced Death Mountain better than when it's like a 8 cave route as a connector, and that's the start of the seed every time you die.
Yep, game over.
None of this up A and palaces either.
Again.
Buzz Thunder gets his rep in this tournament. Always good to see. Every time I walk through a room where you could have to upstab a Kingbot, I just upstab at nothing, just hoping it hits a Kingbot.
Yeah, that's something that the randomizer really teaches you to do, is just, if the room seems too empty in Great Palace, if you have upstab, you might want to just jump around with it a bit in case you suddenly have a slime that's twice your size fall on your face. And now we've got Raikou finding the old Dark Link fella there.
Yeah. Luckily, neither player listened to us. They both did not take the drop and found Dark Link right away.
Mm-hmm. Not through the EON hole, it's right of the Jackamus room.
What I want to know is how the hell did neerrm finish so fast?
He went to Death Mountain early.
I thought I went to Death Mountain early.
Comparatively, it was very late.
Yeah.
Jeez.
See what happened early on. You found the raft fairly quickly. neerrm did not find the cave with the raft, but he did have the hammer, so he figured that his best chance to find the raft would be to go through Death Mountain, and naturally he ends up finding the boots and the trophy, which
of course
the boots led to
of
both
course.
the reflect spell and the glove, and the trophy gave Fairy, which was surprisingly not required, but very, very useful.
When I found Death Mountain early, or not Death Mountain, but when I found all the stuff in Death Mountain early and saw that it was required, I thought I was way ahead.
No, it was really the opposite scenario where neerrm was able to leverage that stuff in Death Mountain to just make his initial trip to East Hyrule so much faster and more efficient. Because you had a tough time in East Hyrule with no downstab, no fairy, no help, really.
Yeah, the reason why I went over there is because I really didn't want to go into Death Mountain, and I was really trying to find spells, because all the spells in the West Continent were either blocked by items that were on the East Continent or in Death Mountain, or they were useless. Like, that was a really difficult seed, I think.
Yeah, like, I totally understand the decision decision making. Honestly, I probably would have gone east before diving into Death Mountain as well, and I might have lost too.
I think I'd probably end up doing the exact same thing there if I find the raft before I find the hammer. But yeah, I think I have to agree with you there, Raikou. This was not the easiest seed at all. Even when you got inside palaces, the layouts, particularly in 4, 5, and 6, were not friendly at all. There were lots of blue iron knuckles everywhere. The seed really didn't let off the gas at all until you got to the Great Palace,
Yeah,
which was
yeah, Great
honestly
Palace was pretty
great.
easy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then you had that wonderful starting location that just gave you a little extra every time you up aid, and gave neerrm back a little extra every time he up aid with boots.
Yeah, that was probably the most frustrating part of the seed, was just trying to find where the items were. Another thing about Palace 2, I was having a really difficult time finding Palace 2, so I was thinking it might have been either boot blocked or the reason why I went back into Fairy Cave is because I thought it might be like cave required. I
Mm-hmm.
just completely spaced that it was right in the middle of that swamp.
Yeah, I noticed you had a lot of trouble just finding stuff on the West Continent in general. Like at the very start, you both went to the northern barren wasteland that was this northern area.
Yeah,
But
there
he
was
found
nothing.
the medicine cave, which it was only a heart container, but he could mark it off his list, and that was the one cave you missed up there.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out if I had missed a cave, because again, I this seed was not very friendly for finding items. Um, and I noticed that I want to wasn't the kid and the medicine and the trophy, were they all required?
Technically, I think we concluded the trophy wasn't required, but have fun without fairy.
Yeah.
Oh, oh yeah, you're right. You did say that fairy wasn't required. I
Yeah.
really just wasn't. I was just trying to. It really felt like a puzzle to me.
Yeah, it was not
That's definitely a
straightforward.
good description of this seed, because that really is exactly what it was. Because you needed a lot of items compared to what you'd normally need in one of these seeds to finish it off. There were very few non-required items.
I was beginning to come to that conclusion, and I mostly went into East Continent early when I did to look for pea bags rather than items. And it turns out that I was just finding items over there. Um, when I found the boots and um, when I found the boots in Death Mountain, like I said, I thought I was way ahead. And then when I found the glove in the water tile, like that was bolstering my confidence. And I really want to watch this back now to see exactly how this was, because I think that's just part of the luck in randomizer. I play a lot of Z1 randomizer, and I know that, like, say if you take the right path in 7 and you find silvers quickly, that can put you way ahead.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like kind of the same thing happened in this seed, where neerrm just stumbled into the boots and the trophy in Death Mountain. It goes contrary to what you would normally do in one of these seeds, and it just paid off for him tremendously.
I mean, it certainly did, but to defend the game a little bit and give you a little bit of a hard time, things like game overing in Maze Island with only certainly did set you back a little bit.
Yeah, the reason why I went over there so quickly is like I said, pea bags. But when I found Maze Island quickly, there's pretty much no reason not to go in there and look for items. Um, and Maze Island turned out to be a dud. They were both magic containers.
Yeah, and we know you needed 7 magic containers for the new Kasuto item that was a 50-50 by the end. It was either the last magic container or a cross.
And then I went back to New Kasuto when I got spell, and I rolled my eyes pretty hard when I found the cross. I don't know if you could tell.
Is it going to be commentator bad if I admit that I totally missed you going back to New Kasuto at all and didn't know that was the cross?
Oh no, that's well. Well, the thing is, I think neerrm had already finished at that point, so it didn't really matter. This wasn't even a race, and I do apologize that this wasn't really entertaining to watch.
Oh, I disagree. I think this was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, I'm not gonna try to kiss up to you and tell you it was competitive, but it was a very interesting seed.
Yeah, it was like what, World Series Game 6? If you two watched that.
No, man, there was no World Series this year.
You must be a Cleveland fan then.
Oh God, no.
But anyway, yeah, that's what I have to say about this seed. I don't think there was really anything that I could have done to prepare myself for this seed.
Yeah, you rolled a pretty quirky seed, and then the seed kind of rolled you. So I'm sorry things didn't work out, but I hope you've enjoyed the tournament as a whole.
I feel even worse for Coper because I bopped him and then went 2 and out. I remember him being the whipping boy in the Z1 tournament too.
Don't never feel guilty for winning a race. Because, you win some, you lose some,
Absolutely.
you earned that win. You did.
Well, so this is going to be a